Hey guys, welcome to the Blue Flag Podcast. This is our second episode, and today we're going to be talking about the Colts and their injuries with Carson Wentz, Quentin Nelson, and their center, and they have another lineman, Eric Fisher. We're going to tackle all those subjects today, but the first subject we're going to be talking about is Jacob Eason, Brett Hundley, and Sam Ehlinger, who we think should take that starting role. And what do you think, Preston?
All right, so, I was big on Jacob Eason coming out of the draft. I think Jacob Eason's a great quarterback out of Georgia. I also was really big on Sam Ehlinger coming out of the draft. I like both of them as quarterbacks. Frank Reich actually has said with them in training camp thus far, Jacob Eason has been performing really well, and he's even said that Jacob Eason has an elite arm. That is exactly what Frank Reich has said about Jacob Eason, is that his arm is elite. He's able to get the ball downfield. He's making those big passes. He's got good pocket presence. He's working out of the pocket great. Whereas Sam Ehlinger is kind of like a different stock quarterback where he doesn't have that elite arm. He has a good arm. He has a great arm. But he's more of a guy who does it on his feet. He's going to move around in the pocket, and he's going to try and make something develop and happen with his feet, rather than Jacob Eason, who's going to use his elite arm power to get it down the field, making those big passes. They have Brett Hundley too. I don't know if Brett Hundley is really going to be much of a factor here. I know with Carson Wentz being out with the surgery he's having happen to his foot, this could put him out for anywhere from like 4 to 5 weeks into the regular season. And with that being said, this is a huge opportunity for Jacob Eason to show what he's got. He was drafted out of Georgia and was viewed as a really good quarterback that had a chance to start in the NFL, and obviously he had Philip Rivers in front of him last year. That was a great learning experience for him to learn off of Philip Rivers. And then they went and got Carson Wentz with the trade to the Eagles. And Jacob Eason, though, he's going to get to show what he's got here. But I think he should definitely watch out for Sam Ehlinger. Sam Ehlinger is going to be making a case to maybe try and take some of that from him. Sam Ehlinger has got a chip on his shoulder, and he's a little bit shorter than Jacob Eason. He doesn't have the height, but he does have the size at 6'1", 225. He's got a very stocky build, and pairing that with his running ability and his good arm, I think Sam Ehlinger could definitely put the pressure on Jacob Eason. This is going to be an amazing quarterback battle to watch pan out through the next 3 weeks of preseason. So definitely, if you're wanting some kind of quarterback battle to watch, I would definitely tune into the Colts and what they got going on, because this is going to get real quick.
Yeah, they're definitely a team that I'm going to be looking for in their first preseason game. I would like Jacob Eason to take that starting role. I kind of like him, SEC quarterback from Georgia. But I know Sam Ehlinger is probably his best competition. I know what Brett Hundley did when he played for the Packers, but I think he's a little bit older and the future is a little bit more brighter for Jacob Eason. But that's not just their only options. They do have options to trade and get other quarterbacks that are backups on other teams that we all have different opinions about who they should go for. My biggest one right now is I think that they should re-sign and pick up Philip Rivers in free agency. Philip Rivers, to me, is actually really underrated. People didn't really appreciate him and what he did back when he was with the Chargers. Then when he came to the Colts that one year, going 11-5, he had great numbers. He's actually, if you look at it, he's actually does better than Ben Roethlisberger normally does. So he said to ESPN that he's not closing the door. I think that they should sign him, and maybe now that Carson Wentz is there, if they still want to rock with him, train him, learn from Philip Rivers for that 1 year, and then maybe the next year or the end of that year, if they're not winning, then put Wentz back in. But if they're going on a playoff run, let Wentz stay behind, learn some things. They're probably not going to win because they do have a lot of injury problems, which we're going to tackle in a little bit. But if you guys had a choice between Philip Rivers, Nick Foles, a possible trade with the Bears, and getting MINSHEW, which is another option from the Jags, who would you guys rather have? I'll go with you, Justin.
I'm saying Nick Foles. I think he's the best game manager there is. Gardner MINSHEW, he's got his game where he's just not a good quarterback. He makes a lot of mistakes, but he also does have that, I don't want to say X factor because he's not that type of quarterback, but he has the ability to elevate in the situation when it's needed. But Nick Foles, I feel like, is a more consistent, more reliable quarterback. He had that playoff affiliate. Everybody knows that one. But even when he was playing, he didn't really make a lot of mistakes. Through his whole career, he's kind of a guy who minimizes mistakes. And I feel like for the Colts right now, that's kind of the guy they need because they have a great running back, 3 great running backs actually.
Yeah.
And then 3 pretty good young receivers who can look to elevate themselves with a decent quarterback. So.
Yeah. So who would you pick, Preston?
I mean, honestly, I think this is probably the best problem to have for the Colts is that you have this wide variety of quarterbacks to choose from between the 3 guys that they already have in there now and Carson Wentz. But if I'm going to choose between any of those options for them to go after, I would push really hard for them to just re-sign Phillip Rivers. I think Phillip Rivers is the guy. I mean, I like Nick Foles. I like Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew is young. And if they did bring him in and he did do good, I mean, that's a guy that they could keep for years down the road, you know. I like the way Gardner Minshew plays. He's very aggressive. He was a low-key quarterback nobody really thought about and then just popped off with the Jags. Did pretty good. Nick Foles, like you said, he's had his times. He's won a Super Bowl. He's kind of just always switched between backup, starter, Super Bowl champ, backup, starter, third string. Right now he's sitting at third string on the depth chart with the team that he's at now, and it's like, I don't know, I think like coaches maybe see something wrong there, and that's why he kind of keeps getting shafted down the line like that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go Phillip Rivers here. I mean, he was a top quarterback coming out of the draft in 2004, and obviously, you know, he was drafted by the Giants, Eli drafted by the Chargers. They, draft day trade. I mean, that was probably the most fair trade ever, but Phillip Rivers, he needs a Super Bowl. Like my younger self watching Phillip Rivers, progress to the NFL and seeing it happen, he's one of the quarterbacks that I really want to see get a chip, It's got to happen.
His numbers weren't even that bad last year. I'm looking at his numbers right now. He played all 16 games. Played 16 games. I think he sat out a week. The new addition to the week is this year. So no, he played every game. He had a 68% completion percentage with 4,000 and almost 200 yards and 24 touchdowns, and that's not bad considering you have other options on that offense to having Jonathan Taylor, Hines, and they score a lot of touchdowns too. And he does have those younger wide receivers. He didn't have Paris Campbell. Paris Campbell was out, so he'll have Paris Campbell, and they still love Paris Campbell. I think I picked him up. You dropped him in fantasy football, and I picked him up for my taxi squad. But I think he has a big role to play, and having Michael Pittman, they have T.Y., a veteran, so they have a chance to go into the playoffs. Now, making a deep playoff run, that's completely up to how healthy their team can be. They do have a lot of injuries, which is what we're going to talk about, how we think their injuries are going to affect certain players in fantasy football and the team, obviously, as a whole. Because I think the major injuries is from that offensive line. If you pick up Gardner Minshew, like we talked about, his main problem was that the Jags never had an offensive line. And he'd be going to a team that had an offensive line and now they always had, Jags somehow got James Robinson to do really good. So they've always had kind of a good running back while he's been there. But I think with their injuries, Jonathan Taylor in fantasy football is probably going to have to fall back a little bit. I think he loses a bit of value. But when you have the guard, the tackle, and the center all out with injuries, and that's like your biggest strength is how good your offensive line is, I think you kind of lose that ability to run the ball a little bit more. And if they have all these injuries, I think they should just use this year as a test year if they don't pick up a veteran like Phillip Rivers, to test out their young guys. I mean, you use Carson Wentz to see how he's going to do when he comes back. Jonathan Taylor, you kind of already know what he's going to do. You have your young core of wide receivers. You can see how they're going to do some different things. I mean, if you're not trying to win, just use this as a year to learn from. And I know you had the conversation about talking about the offensive line's injuries. So if you want to start going into that, we can discuss their injuries and how it might affect the team.
What do you think, Justin?
Yeah. For the injuries, I see the emphasis. I mean, like, a bad offensive line can not only affect quarterback, but it affects the running back, it affects the receivers, it affects everything. You can't win a game. You can't win a lot of games without a good O-line. But seeing as how most of them will be back, and Ryan Kelly's supposed to be back, it could linger, but he's supposed to be back by week 1. It could affect maybe the chemistry, but they worked together last year, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly.
Yeah.
Quentin Nelson, he just had his surgery. He says he's supposed to be back by week 1, but I don't know if I see that, because him and Carson Wentz had the same surgery, same timetable for return, and he's saying he's going to be back by week 1, but we'll see about that.
Yeah.
Still, I don't think it hurts them detrimentally, just because they will be back earlier in the season. Now, if they're coming back like week 13 or like week 14, it could already end their season to where they're not going to be back. But Quentin Nelson's supposed to be back in the first half of the year. Ryan Kelly's supposed to be back by week 1. Eric Fisher, he's torn his Achilles, but he won't be. I'm not even sure if there's a timetable for him.
Yeah.
And I think he is a little older of a player.
He is,
It might be tough for him as an offensive lineman who uses their feet a lot to
Yeah.
come back from something like
Well,
that.
they did. I'm pretty sure he wasn't on the team last year. They picked him up in free agency. He's supposed to come back sometime in the middle of the season. And then, so they had Anthony Constanzon. How do you say his last name?
His last name's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Catarzone.
Catanzaro or
Costanzo.
something.
Yeah.
Costanzo,
But,
yeah. I think
and
Costanzo.
I think they still have him. But Darius Leonard, he's also another one that has a little bit of an injury. But they just signed that massive deal for him, so I don't think they're worried about that either. But as for injuries, yeah, it's going to hurt them, but I think they can recover.
Yeah, that's big thing is offensive line, because we all know that if you don't have a quarterback, a lot of people think, oh, if you don't have a running back or a quarterback in fantasy, the team doesn't have a quarterback, they're just going to keep running the ball, so Jonathan Taylor's value should go up. But it's like, no, it's the opposite. If a team knows that all you can do is run the ball, they're just going to blitz. And yes, times they can break big on blitzes because your gaps open up a little bit easier sometimes with certain types of blitzes, but when you're talking about a dude, like if you're getting blitzed every play because your quarterback is Brett Hundley, or it's whoever, if Eason doesn't end up panning out or isn't doing as good as we think, like Jonathan Taylor's going to see, like his yards I think should go down, his attempts should go up, which if it's just good in fantasy football, because if you're getting attempts, you get a chance to do good. So I think not having an offensive line, not having a quarterback right now, it really hurts Jonathan Taylor's stock. Now, and if you're doing dynasty, obviously not as bad, but in redraft leagues, I think it pretty much hurts him because he was like a projected fifth running back this year. And same now we have Saquon that's having injuries. So I mean, there's a lot of injuries are starting to spur up, and we just drafted, so a lot of people are getting screwed a little bit with random injuries like this. So you guys you want to talk about the wide receivers and how a quarterback should affect them?
Yeah, so the Colts wide receivers, they've got a very good number of them. You got Michael Pittman Jr., you've got Zach Pascal, Paris Campbell, T.Y. Hilton. There's plenty of receivers there, especially when we're talking in fantasy terms. They're all going to be great receivers that you would ideally want to start. Now, I'd be a little bit more weary now, considering Carson Wentz dealing with the injury. I think it is something positive to look at, the fact that Jacob Eason does have that elite arm, like Frank Reich says. And if he has that arm that they're saying he has, and he can show those spurts of aggressiveness, throwing it down the field, getting his receivers to utilize their best traits, which
Yeah.
T.Y. Hilton being a speedster, you've got Paris Campbell, who's very aggressive. Michael Pittman, he's got the size to go up and get passes and beat DBs one-on-one over the top. I think it could be good for them, but it's a 50-50 with Jacob Eason. Maybe Jacob Eason can't do that. Maybe he can't, in a game he can't produce. I mean, there's no telling. We haven't seen him in action yet. So, I mean, if you're drafting now, if you're doing a redraft league and you're drafting, I mean, I'd stay away from any of the Colts receivers until about, later rounds, like rounds 8,
Yeah.
9, and 10. I mean, if they're still sitting there, sure, go out and get them, because that's around the time you're going to start getting some bench players. And let's say Jacob Eason does good, well, you just struck on a player.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't take any of them early. I mean, considering the quarterback situation, it might be a little shaky.
Yeah. All right, so I guess our next topic, so we could talk about the Hall of Fame game that we just saw on Thursday night. I watched some of the highlights and things, and we can jump right into the Cowboys and their defensive players that you saw that ended up doing really well, and you want to talk about them?
Yeah, so I watched a lot of the film from this game and broke down a lot of things. And the first one I'm going to start with, obviously, for the Cowboys is their defensive linebacker, Micah Parsons, they got in the first round. He was exceptional in his first preseason game. Everything I think the Cowboys were wanting to have, and now they have him with Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith. This is just going to be a nasty linebacker group. I mean, it's going to be insane. Micah Parsons, he got a recovered fumble. I think it was towards the end of the first quarter.
Yeah.
And he let me see real quick. 1 second. I want to see how many.
Shouldn't be getting notifications.
So he had 3 total tackles. 3 of them were solo. Throw in that recovered fumble in there. There were plenty of plays when I'm watching that wherever the ball was at, he was at. He was always at the point of attack. He was always getting to the ball. He had a knack for putting his nose in the ball and just getting there.
Yeah.
He was sideline to sideline. I mean, if I could say, he was all over the field, and he was getting in the backfield. He was running down players. He was showing a lot of effort, showing a lot of hustle. I think that's what the Cowboys were really expecting from him, really wanting from him.
Yeah.
And I think Micah Parsons, they struck big on Micah Parsons. That was a great pickup for them. And at 6'3", 245, I mean, he's just going to be a monster at middle linebacker. I mean, he's gonna destroy offenses. I mean, he's going to have a great season this year. And then for the Cowboys, they also have another rookie linebacker, Jabril Cox, who played at LSU. Mm-hmm. They got him in the 4th round, I think. Let me see.
Yeah, it was 4th round.
Yeah, it was the 4th round. They got him in the 4th round. Cowboys drafted Jabril Cox in the 4th round, and he had a great game as well. He had 5 total tackles, 4 of them being solo. And I don't think he really played much. I mean, he got to get in towards like the end of the game. I saw him playing a little bit towards like the 4th quarter. And I mean, considering he only had a quarter of play and was able to put up 5 total tackles, I mean, at that rate, you're looking at 20 tackles in a game, which is insane. Yeah. I mean, that's great for a linebacker to have 20 tackles in one game, and to do that with such limited time. I mean, it's nice. Another rookie that they had is Nahshon Wright. Nahshon Wright was a rookie that they drafted out of Oregon State, and he had a great game as well. He's a lot bigger. He's 6'4", which you don't really see with corners. Nahshon Wright stands at 6'4". He's 22 years old. He's a young guy, and I mean, this is something they needed, was corners, and they struck on him. I mean, in the game, he did let one go deep to Chase Claypool at one point, but he stuck with him the entire time. Chase Claypool is just a freak of a receiver, so obviously he made that great catch. But a little bit later on, they tried to hit him again deep, thinking that they can, get him again. And this time it didn't work out. It was going towards the end zone. He stayed locked up on that receiver the entire time, got a hand up there and smacked it away, which is great to see from a rookie. Yeah. And considering his size, I mean, if he can pan out, he's going to be able to size up well against some of those bigger receivers in the NFL, and they're not going to be able to body him like they do some of these 5'9" and 5'10" corners. So Nahshon Wright could be a great piece for them. Their 2nd-round pick, Kelvin Joseph, also had a great game. He only allowed 2 catches. I think one was for 7 yards and one was for 6 yards. Then, I mean, obviously he tackled both the guys that caught those passes, and he made a couple good plays. But all in all, I mean, that 2nd-round pick he was shutting things down on the defensive side. Mm-hmm. Not really letting many guys get by him, not letting anything big, pop off over top of them. He was kind of keeping everything funneled in, only allowing short catches, hawking the guy down, making the tackle. And all in all, I mean, this is what this defense needs. And I think these rookies are going to be a great piece. And if I had to pick one thing that went right in the game, it was the Dallas Cowboys defensive rookies.
Yeah, that's a big question mark for me, because that Week 1 matchup against my Bucks, I anticipate the Bucks winning because of how young that defense is. So if they ended up panning out quicker than expected, then we might actually have a good showing for the first game. I think that's the first game of the year.
It is Thursday night football.
So that'll be a fun game to watch. I'm definitely going to be watching. I have a few people I have CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, and Tom Brady in a few of my fantasy football leagues. So I'm excited to see how they do. But my big takeaway from the Hall of Fame game was Najee Harris. I mean, he's a pretty basic person to talk about, but the way he ran the ball, I was studying how he he hits the hole, how he like after that initial handoff, what he does, those characteristics he has. If he's going to be the type of person that likes to read like a Le'Veon Bell or a Derrick Henry, like, and then cut and go, or if he was going to be more towards a Dalvin Cook, who as soon as that ball snaps, he's hitting that hole. He doesn't care who's in front of it, and then he decides afterwards. And what I saw was it wasn't full on Dalvin Cook because he doesn't hit the hole as fast, but when he catches that ball, he gets that ball from that handoff, it's one decision go. And which is great when you're talking about someone who gets a lot of yards after contact, like Austin Eckler, who
Right.
I think was leading the league in that. As soon as they get that handoff, they're not worrying about like, oh, is there a hole? They see the first hole, they're making quick decisions, and they're going. And he only ran the ball 7 times and got 22 yards, but out of those 7 carries, as soon as he got hit, he was falling like 3 or 4 yards. There's very few times where he got tackled and he didn't gain more yards after he got tackled. So when you're talking about a guy that can get you yards after contact, which is very valuable, because I know me, when I had Eckler last year and I picked up his backup, Joshua Kelly, he is really bad at yards after contact. As soon as he gets touched, he's going down. And that's why he was not a viable pickup for me last year. And having a guy like him going in like the 3rd round in fantasy football leagues, who's going to get a lot of attempts this year, is extremely valuable. So if you were able to get him, I think you're getting a hell of a dude that could be a top 10 running back this year easily, if he's given the amount of attempts that he should. But I really like the way he played. I'm really excited to see what he does in week 1 and for the rest of the preseason. But what did you have any takeaways from the Hall of Fame games and players you thought?
I was going to talk about the Steelers quarterback situation. Because, I mean, later in his career, Ben Roethlisberger has turned into a little bit of an injury risk. I knew he was out for a year with that shoulder injury, and then here and there he gets beat up. But he's a pretty tough quarterback nonetheless.
Yeah.
But I just want to talk about which quarterbacks look the best and who look the worst. I know there's a lot of hype surrounding Dwayne Haskins when he first got signed to the Steelers. They were like, they're going to fix him. He's going to be what he was drafted to be. But that first preseason game kind of showed that he's still the same Dwayne Haskins. I mean, he didn't do bad. He was 8 for 13, 54 yards, had a 70 passer rating. But, I mean, that's not very good for preseason. When you have Josh Dobbs and Mason Rudolph outplaying you,
Yeah.
and you were getting hyped up in the preseason and all through training camp, it's just a little disappointing to see Dwayne Haskins still. He's very inaccurate. If you're watching him, he was missing a lot of easy passes.
Yeah, he was.
He wasn't getting pass breakups or anything like that. It
Yeah.
was just kind of like low throws, and he was rushing, and it looked like he was a little nervous. Like he didn't have that calmness that you need a quarterback. But as for who was the best, I think Josh Dobbs was great. He did have the best passer rating. Mason Rudolph, he was doing pretty good. He was 6 for 9, 84 yards, but he did have that fumble. It was I don't know if that was his fault or if that was a play call, because it was on the I don't know if it was an end around. It was supposed to be a handoff, but I don't know if that was a receiver's fault or if that was Mason Rudolph's fault for hanging on so long.
Yeah.
But it was a little bit of a mental mistake, it looked like. But either way, I mean, I think if you're choosing your number 2 guy, I'm gonna have to give it to Mason Rudolph just because he did have that. I mean, he has experience as a starter.
Yeah.
I mean, Josh Dobbs is good. I'm not saying he can't steal it from him, but could have been a fluke touchdown. He had
It's definitely going to come down to what the next 3 games look like for them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's their main competition, I think, those 2 guys. I don't think Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, I think Dwayne Haskins probably going to get cut.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
gonna.
Unfortunately, because you don't like to see
Unless
that
he
from a
can-
first-round quarterback. I mean, he shouldn't,
Yeah.
you know.
Unless he can turn it around, but I mean,
Which let's hope he can. Let's
Maybe,
hope he can.
maybe he was nervous. You never know. He could do something.
I would rather see Dwayne Haskins on the roster than Mason Rudolph, personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Joshua Dobbs. I watched him play in college. I hated playing against him as the Gators. We weren't that good when we played him because he's a very good mobile quarterback. He's a funny-looking dude, but he can play football. And the touchdown that he threw, I believe it was to Chase Claypool. That was like what I remember him doing in college, like those line throws. That I mean, the corner was there, but the receiver definitely got him beat, which helped out a lot. But it was a damn good accurate throw, and me personally, I'd rather see him as the second, just because of his age and that he's from the SEC, Tennessee, and I do like him a little bit more than Mason Rudolph. But Mason Rudolph did perform pretty well, and Dwayne Haskins has to show, or else I think he's going to get cut again. And I don't even know if there's going to be another team that would want to pick him up after that. I can't think of a team that would actually need. I mean, that'd be crazy if the Colts pick him up. But all right, so I think we're going to jump into the Rams situation and their running backs. And do we think Darrell Henderson is a viable number one option until Akers is back, or do we think they should sign someone who's better than him, that's a little bit older and well-known, like a Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson, Le'Veon, someone like that? Or do we think that they should pick up someone that's a little bit less better, like not as good, but pretty consistent at getting those rushing yards? So I think we can start with you this time, and who you think that they should pick up in the preseason.
Personally, I do like Darrell Henderson. I think he can serve as their bell cow. That's how you say it, right?
Yeah.
Didn't sound right. But they do need to sign someone for depth, at least. Like a veteran who doesn't seem to have a lot of injury issues, because that's just going to hurt them in the long run if they don't sign somebody. It sounds weird, but Frank Gore is a free agent, and he still wants to play.
Yeah.
So, and that dude hasn't gotten injured in I don't know how long, but he seems like he's got the durability on, that's for sure. Adrian Peterson's out there still, but all in all, I think they should stick with Darrell Henderson. He knows the system. He knows how to play in that Sean McVay playbook. So
Yeah.
I think they keep him as a starter, but they do definitely sign someone as a backup, just to have a little bit of insurance.
Yeah, because they're going to be needing him to do a lot of reps. And who do you think they should pick up or not pick up?
So I think they should definitely pick somebody up, because I don't think anybody after Darrell Henderson is going to be, really very serviceable to help them out. When you need to pull him out to give him a breather, I don't know if they really have anybody on the depth chart that's going to be able to get that done.
Xavier Jones and Jake Funk.
Yeah.
So that rookie that they picked up.
This is one that I mean, not many people would really think about, but he is still out in free agency, and he's just the one that stands out on the sheet to me. He's the absolute opposite of Darrell Henderson. I would go get T.J. Yeldon. I mean, he's an Alabama running back. But for the Jags, he wasn't a number one guy. He was a number two. He was a receiving back. He was elusive. He's a speedster. He's everything that Darrell Henderson's not. I mean, that'd be a perfect running back to go get. He's got experience in the NFL. He could be great on, those passing down situations where you want a guy that comes out of the backfield and goes out on like a bubble route, dump it off to him, let him go, He can get down the field. He's got good size. I like T.J. Yeldon when he was at Alabama. And honestly, it makes sense. I mean, because if you go out and you get a guy like Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson, it's just going to be kind of like this battle between them at times, because they run the same way, they play the same way. It's just going to cause this, not chemistry. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be chemistry. It wouldn't be good. So a guy that obviously isn't going to threaten Darrell Henderson, a guy that can maybe be what Darrell Henderson doesn't possess, and I mean, that's T.J. Yeldon. It's perfect. Yeah. It makes sense. T.J. Yeldon. If I were them, I'd go pick up T.J. Yeldon, just sign him on 1 or 2 year deal. Nothing too crazy. Yeah. But I mean, he's probably still ready to get back in on a team, and I mean, I think the Rams should give him a call. Yeah, I mean, if they pick up T.J. Yeldon, their backfield will be kind of like how the Colts backfield is, with Hines as the receiving back and Jonathan Taylor as like the rusher. Yeah. And I think Darrell Henderson has the talent. I know Sean McVay has said he has the talent. His only worry is if he's going to get injured or not, if he can stay healthy. So if he could stay healthy, he's going to be a great running back this year. And I think in fantasy football, at a flex option, especially if you lost Akers and you picked him up, if they start questioning signing a big name that could threaten him, hurry up and maybe try to trade him, so you can get some value out of him. But as of right now, I have him and I'm keeping him, and I think he's going to do pretty well, because Sean McVay does a pretty good job at making even bad running backs into viable starters. So I do like the T.J. Yeldon. I did not think of him. I was thinking more of a Frank Gore at the time, but now that you say that, I do think T.J. Yeldon will be better, because he does receive the ball and he's a third down back. And I think Henderson, first and second down,
running the ball, and then having
Yeah.
someone that they can dump to would help out Matthew Stafford a lot, because I've never seen Henderson catch as many balls. I mean, he doesn't have bad hands, I know, but I don't think his specialty is catching the ball. So having a route runner like T.J. Yeldon would, and he's not going to cost the team a lot of money. I mean, I think if you sign Todd Gurley or a bigger name like Le'Veon, you're risking spending money that year that
They would
you
want
could
more money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you would save more money by getting Yeldon. He probably would take an extreme pay cut to play. I don't even think he's a free agent. So
Yeah.
I'm sure he would just want to get on a team to prove himself, and this would be the perfect team to do that this year. And then our last subject that we didn't talk about earlier in the show that we wanted to talk about is, if Dak is not ready week 1, who do we think plays? I don't know who wants to go first. You want to go?
Justin, I think I'll let you take this one first. And
Well, if I'm deciding on who's going to start for them, I mean, the AFL paid off. Again, it's Garrett Gilbert, because
Yeah.
I mean, he's looked the best. Last year he proved that he can play in
Yeah.
real speed football. So I don't know. He did definitely look the best. Ben DiNucci should just go home.
Yeah, it's kind of a meme now.
I didn't really. He played them last year as well. Didn't really do much. And
Yeah.
I think they should just let him sit somewhere. I
Yeah.
don't know, dude. Cooper Rush is okay. He's serviceable. But I think out of all, Garrett Gilbert is probably their best bet.
Yeah, I like
But-
Garrett Gilbert a lot too.
But if they could, I would not start any of those. I would definitely probably, if I had to go with a season, like a few games into the season, I'd sign a bet. I don't know. I can't trust Garrett Gilbert to win me a few games. It's hard to trust him, but
Yeah, I don't know if
if Jerry Jones can do it, he can do it.
if every year the Cowboys believe that they got the best team, and on paper they always normally do. Last year was a defensive problem, and also obviously Dak getting injured, and their offensive line as well getting injured, and now having all those offensive linemen back, players that I think should do really well. I'm still questionable about Zeke,
Yeah.
obviously, but I think if the quarterback situation doesn't get fixed and Dak doesn't come back, I think you're going to have another year of a bad Zeke. You're going to have another – I mean, CeeDee Lamb did pretty good without him. CeeDee Lamb did really well without him. So having Dak at all would increase his numbers, and you can get CeeDee Lamb pretty late in rounds. So, and you have a chance of becoming a top 15 wide receiver. Would be, a great – like if you're getting him in like the 6th, 7th round and him end up being like a 4th round talent, you can seriously make a lot of good moves there at that pick. But I do like Garrett Gilbert a lot better as a second option, but then again, I would want to start him with that team. That team has a chance to do really well, and I like what they're trying to do with keeping Dak Prescott, like not trying to force things, like letting it come to him and help fix his shoulder injury now.
Yeah.
But if they don't get that figured out, I think that this is going to be another bad year. What do you think, Preston?
out of the 3 quarterbacks that played on Thursday night for the Dallas Cowboys, I'm just like looking at the stats and I'm appalled by Ben DiNucci. I mean, 7 completions off of 17 attempts for only 89 yards, threw an interception, which then makes his passer rating a 33.7. And he got to play for like a full quarter, and that was the stats he put up. You let him play a full game, that dude's gonna put up like Nathan Peterman type stats. Like, it's bad. Like, we're talking 5 interceptions in a game, no touchdowns. Ben DiNucci, guaranteed, he's cut, and he'll be gone at the end of preseason when they do the roster cuts down to 53.
Yeah.
Ben DiNucci's gone. Cooper Rush, they'll put him on the practice squad. Obviously, if Dak is not back and ready, Cooper Rush will be the number 2. I think Garrett Gilbert would go number 1. They would try and, ride the wave with Garrett Gilbert. He threw 13 passes, completed 9 of them for 104 yards, and had a 93.1 passer rating, which is not bad for 1 quarter of action.
No, it's not.
Garrett Gilbert, he had a good game, and he was moving in the pocket good. He had good pocket presence. He got sacked twice, but on those 2 sacks, the pocket was closing. He really, honestly, you're still sitting in the pocket. You can't just throw it out of bounds, get an intentional grounding. Now you lose it down, back him up. It's, so he had to take some of those sacks. Couldn't find any receivers. That could have just been because, the backups were in on the offensive line.
Yeah, it could be.
But still, I mean, I think Garrett Gilbert, if you give him a full game, I think he could definitely, I mean, in 1.5 quarters, I think he played, putting up 104 yards. I mean, yeah, it was backups he was playing against, but, I mean, say he gets a full game, I mean, he could be pushing close to 400 passing yards in a game. I mean, Garrett Gilbert showed that, you know, that kind of stardom when he was with the AFL. I mean, the Orlando Apollos, he led that little 8-game series that they had. He led in passing touchdowns and passing yards in that little league. And so that's why the Cowboys picked him up, because obviously he's a good quarterback. He just needs a little bit more time in the NFL, and I think he's kind of getting that. I'd like to see what he does in these next 3 preseason games, because if Dak's not ready week 1, I would love to see Garrett Gilbert get some play time.
Yeah.
Add to the Ben DiNucci hate train. His passer rating was 33.7. Pretty bad.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Yeah.
Talking about pretty bad, can we talk about the kickers?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
the kickers,
the
dude.
kickers were pretty bad.
What happened? Dude, like the first 5 field goals that were kicked, only 1 was made.
Yeah.
One.
Sam Sloman.
Sam Sloman, dude. Like, what's going on?
Wait, I thought the is this for their backup kickers?
No, I'm pretty sure Sam Sloman is like
Well, I
their
thought-
kicker.
So Greg
Like,
Zuerlein
that's-
was the kicker for the Dallas Cowboys.
I thought the Steelers had Chris Boswell.
Yeah, what happened to him?
I don't know what they got going on.
I think that they
I think
picked
they
up
just
the-
picked up some backup
they're
kickers just to
doing
kick and see what they can do.
competition, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, they lost.
Because the
They're done.
Cowboys kicker, I thought they had Greg Zuerlein, like you're saying, but they had this Niswander guy or whatever his name was. He was punting and kicking and doing kickoffs. He was just doing all the kicking. They had nobody else out there. They had it was just this one guy
I wonder if
doing
he's
all the
injured.
kicking, and he was doing it pretty bad. Like, you got one job. Like, I get being a kicker in the NFL is hard, and I get it, but nothing pisses me off more than when you have one job to kick a ball in the NFL and you miss. And like when it's short ones, he was missing short kicks.
The
I
thing
think there was a
with kickers
29-yarder that he missed.
The
And I'm
thing-
like, that is, you've got to have a 29-yarder. Those are chip shot field goals. Those are
Extra point.
That's basically an extra point. Yeah, you cannot miss a 29-yard field goal. I mean, I don't.
That's funny.
The thing is with kickers, it's like when you're already good, it's like how do you not stay good? You know what I mean? It's like when you go to practice, what do?
You just kick.
You kick field goals.
You go over to the corner and you just kick by yourself all day.
I think you get in your head. I think you get in your
It's
own
all
head.
mental, yeah.
Bill, you remember that one game many years ago when the Packers kicked? I forget, they were kicking like a crap ton of field goals because they couldn't get into the end zone. And Mason Crosby kicked 6 field goals and made 1. And if you
I remember that game. I know exactly what game you're talking about.
in that one game, if you had him, he had like -3 points. Imagine
Yeah.
starting your kicker on fantasy football and you look and you're like, miss field goal, miss field goal, miss field goal, and then he finally makes one, and you're like, yay, my score is no longer -8, it's -5.
Well, it's like, who was that kicker? It was a while back. The Vikings were in the playoffs, and it was his fault as to why they didn't
I
get
thought it was
to
the
go.
Bears.
Black.
The Bears.
the
Who was
Bears.
it?
Cody Parkey.
No, it wasn't Cody. Well, Cody Parkey's another bad one. But there was a kicker. I forget his name. He was for the Vikings. And it was
Bailey.
literally game on
Was
the
it Bailey?
line.
No.
Game on the line, and he misses the field goal. And I was like, you got to be
Yeah,
kidding
it
me.
was a double doink.
Yeah, it was one of those. Yeah.
It's the one that they called the double doink as a meme, but I forget the game of the kicker. It wasn't Blair Walsh was the kicker for the Vikings.
I'm thinking Kai Forbath, but it wasn't Kai Forbath. I know it
It was
wasn't him.
some-
It was somebody else.
Wasn't it Bailey?
Not
No.
Bailey.
Dan Bailey is a good kicker. Dan Bailey's a good kicker.
Let me look up double doink.
I have to
It
know.
might have been
I have to
Cody
know what his
Parkey.
name is.
I think it
So
was Cody Parkey.
brief pause here. We have to know the terrible kicker from Minnesota.
It was the Vikings.
No, the double doink, I just looked up. The double doink was a blocked game-winning field goal attempted by the Chicago Bears' Cody
Yeah, it's Cody Parkey.
Parkey.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about, the Vikings?
I don't know why.
No, I'm telling you, there was.
Oh, it was. No, I know you're talking about. It was Blair Walsh.
It was Blair Walsh.
Yeah.
You're right. Right here, it says we missed a chip shot field goal. That's life, says Minnesota Vikings coach Mike Zimmer in the aftermath of his team's heartbreaking loss to Seattle on Sunday. Vikings kicker Blair Walsh had indeed missed a 27-yarder in the final seconds that would have won the game. Blair
27.
Walsh, a 27-yard field goal, misses it. They don't win the game, and the Vikings have to walk home and lose the playoffs. That is just... When you're on the sidelines and you've played your heart out as like a quarterback to get your team to that point, and you watch a guy like Blair Walsh go out there trotting on out to kick a field goal. It's a 27-yarder. It should be a chip shot.
Was this in the playoffs?
And he misses, dude. And then he misses, and you're like, what do you do?
Bro,
You're
remember
just
it.
sitting there on the sidelines. You're like, you got to be kidding me. We pay you millions of dollars to do one thing, and you can't kick that field goal. That's a 27-yard field goal that you're about to miss. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, that's like the quickest thing to get released from a team. I mean, being a kicker, you have the easiest job, but you also have like no room for error whatsoever. You miss one field goal that is like a clutch field goal to win a game, you're gone.
Yeah.
You're gone. Your team's cutting you the next day. You're done. Like, when you piss a coach off and you lose a playoff game because you're not being able to kick, you're going to have to find a new job. You're done.
Yeah. That was funny. But I think that concludes this episode. I think we've cut it down a little bit more than what we wanted.
Yeah.
So I think
first
we're-
one was kind of, we just kept rolling and rolling with it.
Yeah, so the next episode, I think we're going to tackle more fantasy football stuff and our predictions for the next week. But that was the end of episode 2, so we'll see you guys on the next one. We just hit on record.